This is the Ag Queen Podcast. This podcast explores the agriculture industry with the movers and shakers of those shaping it. Here's your host, Lori Boyer.
Today, my guest is Mark Arnusch. He is with Arnusch Farms in Keensburg, Colorado. And according to your social media, you have entered into a new partnership with New Belgium Brewing. I want to talk more about this because I think this is pretty exciting what you're doing.
Yeah, that's correct. We formed a little bit of a research collaboration group with New Belgium Brewery, Montana State University, and Proximity Malts out of the San Luis Valley to test what we think are drought-tolerant type genetics for tomorrow's next beer.
All right. Well, tell me a little bit more about how this came about.
So we've been a barley grower for Proximity Malts for a number of years, and being a strong CSU alumni family, we've always enjoyed and appreciated the collaboration between New Belgium Brewery and Colorado State University. And so we were sitting in a meeting one day, and I'm like, why aren't we using our CSU network of alumni to help advance New Belgium and barley growing here in northern Colorado? There's got to be an opportunity here. And so that started the conversation, and lo and behold, we met up with the breeders out of Montana State University talking about some of our challenges here in the high plains, and one of those is resiliency from drought. And how can we manage to grow a barley crop with less, whether that's water scarcity, water availability matters, or just rainfall issues. We need to be able to provide a strong product for the growing craft beer and spirits industry in the state. And how can we do it here? And that's basically how the project started.
Just for my own clarification here, Mark, how is CSU, Montana State University, and yourself then working together on this?
So CSU does a great job on breeding a lot of hard red and hard white winter wheat varieties, but Montana State's specialty is clearly barley. Okay. And with New Belgium's collaboration with Colorado State University, they were looking for the next and best barley varieties in the region. And so that's why they've reached out to Montana State, and they've got a great big library of genetics up in that area that they feel will move south out of those northern latitudes. And our farm is going to do a little bit of that testing for them in this upcoming season.
So they have not tested drought-tolerant varieties before?
Montana State has tested these drought-tolerant varieties in Montana. As you know, Lori, I mean, drought tolerance and heat tolerance is different in northern Colorado than Montana. A hot day in Montana might be 90 degrees. Well, we might be 105 in the middle of the afternoon with a 30-mile-an-hour wind. So how can we take some of these drought resiliency genes and move them into our high plains geography, and do they work?
Yeah, I was just going to ask about out here because most of the barley in Colorado is grown up in the San Luis Valley.
That's correct.
Are they doing any drought tolerant varieties up there?
You know, I don't know if the Coors Company is doing much in the way of drought resiliency in that area or not. For the longest time, we were Coors seed barley growers, and we didn't really have a lot of dialogue between the growers and what we were facing in the fields in the company. It was just produce this many bushels, produce this many pounds of this variety, and keep moving forward. But you know, water is a big issue here in Colorado, and water touches everything here. And you've seen even a large company like Coors Brewing Company is now exiting a lot of the malt barley production in northern Colorado.
Okay.
And so a lot of that's going to focus down in the San Luis Valley. And we're hoping some of the research we do on our farm provides clues elsewhere.
And who actually provides the seed then, Mark?
Actually, Montana State University, because they're a publicly funded university, is providing us the seed.
Okay.
We have to take a lot of the agronomic observations and report that back to this consortium of sorts. But they've been a great source of knowledge, expertise. They really are sounding board for a lot of the cultural practices we use within our operation. And they're truly the resource here.
Got it. Okay. How many acres then do you have dedicated to this?
So we have 3 varieties, each one of them under a different management practice for a total of roughly 9 acres. It's basically the next step above doing the small strip trials or the small short row trials like you would see at a CSU field day or in this case, Montana State University field day. And we're taking that and applying it to more of a larger field scale application. Some of this will truly be dry land. There will be no water applied at all. And then we're going to have some timings of irrigations based upon when our water resources are available to us, typically when the river conditions are free or we're in priority. And so we're really trying to match the management practices of a northern Colorado barley grower to the water availability in our environment.
When do you plant barley?
We like to plant when the soil temperatures in the morning are above 38 degrees. So this year that was the 10th of March. In years past, it's been late February, but sometimes it's also late March.
Okay. And then when is it harvested?
We'll try to come out around the 10th or 15th of July was typically when these varietals will come off. And so for us on our farming operation, that helps us capture some of the early water that we tend to have, helps us get out of some of the stress vectors of heat and wind. And it's an early crop for us. So it provides us a shot in the arm from cash flow perspective earlier in the year than say a corn crop or say a sugar beet crop.
Okay. And then so I'm assuming teams from Montana State University will be frequenting the farm to do their testing and check things out.
Yep, we're going to have observation teams out of Montana State. We're going to have some observation teams out of Proximity, but it sounds like the whole entire brewing team from New Belgium Brewery is going to try to make it out here from time to time as well. So hopefully they've got some of their product in tow with them when they show up.
Yeah. Okay. That will be very cool. So what New Belgium breweries, they're actually based in Fort Collins, right?
Correct. Not too far from the CSU campus.
Okay. That was just more my FYI than anything. Okay.
Mhm.
Let's see. What else? What are other neat things or nuances about this partnership?
I think too often we kind of get lulled to sleep by planting varieties that we've had on our farm for 15, 20 years. And because we're a commercial seed barley grower, we tend to grow 2 to 3 of these barley varieties and then sell them to growers across the country. But to see some of these genetics that have literally come out of a greenhouse and then go into our farm scale is really fascinating. And one of the things that has been brought to my attention in this entire project is the wheat stem sawfly resilience or resistance in this case for barley. It's not to say that wheat stem sawfly will not feed on barley, but given the choice between barley and wheat, they go to wheat every time. And so I'm hoping that someday, if we find a barley variety out of this trial, or maybe one in the future, we can move barley acres to some of the dryland areas to try to break up this pest cycle that we have for the sawfly.
Yeah. Yeah. That is pretty neat. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Are the tests do they include like any cover crops associated with this? Anything biological wise associated with any of these testing?
No, we're not using any cover crops in this production. We are going to look outside of this trial at a couple of things on our farm to try to limit stress, both heat and drought stress, some uh, hormones, possibly some other cultural practices to reduce stress on the crop, maybe some irrigation management remedies. Um, but what we're really focusing on is malt quality. This project's not going to be based upon so much how many bushels or what the test weight is, but what does it look like going through the malt house? And can we share in some of that value as a grower? You know,
And do you happen to know, Mark, like what do they look for that constitutes quality when it comes to the actual beer product?
So for most of your listeners or readers, they're going to be looking for protein content, starch content, things like that. But it's even more complex than that. It's things like amylase content, glucan strands. How tightly do the starch particles hold together, and then how quickly will this barley sprout in a environment, a closed environment? So. Uh, to grow barley to use in the malt barley process, they have to start that sprouting process, and then they stop it just before it starts to shoot a green shoot. And so that's the point when beer starts its process. So they need that barley to wake up quickly. They need it to use less water, and they need it to sprout at a colder temperature.
All right. What else have I missed asking you about it?
Barley used to be a staple crop in northern Colorado, especially here in Weld County, Larimer County, and to a certain extent Boulder County. But with Coors leaving the area and Anheuser-Busch leaving the area decades ago, we're looking for that alternative that matches the crop to the water that we have available. So my goal out of this is to try to find a vibrant area where we could grow these barley genetics again so that maybe a Coors Brewing Company or somebody like New Belgium will come calling again and offers up the opportunity for growers to bring this crop back into their rotation.
Sure. Okay. All right, Mark. Well, I want to take just a couple of minutes here before we run out of time to congratulate you on being named Top Producer of the Year through the Farm Journal Top Producer Summit. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit more about that award.
Oh, gosh, we were absolutely stunned by that. It's been nearly a month and we're still trying to soak all of that in. We were caught off guard when we were nominated. We were nominated by a number of different individuals and entities across the country, and once you're nominated, you're required to fill out this application. And we weren't really sure that we wanted to do that. I can guarantee you, there's thousands, if not tens of thousands, of farmers that are much better than our farm, and we were certainly honored to be considered. But I think the reason why we decided to fill out that application had to do with our story. And it's not my story, it's not my family's story, it's about the mentors who helped us get here. I benefited from working with some of the greatest farmers and mentors a young farmer could ever have, like the Don Rutledges of the world, the Bob Cicadas of the world, the Fred Walkers, the Jerry Yergs. My dad. My dad immigrated to this country in 1952 from Austria. They had $11 in their pocket, and sometimes I joke that sometimes I don't even have $11 in my pocket. But we think of agriculture as having a lot of diversity, and we certainly have our challenges. But imagine coming across the ocean with $11 in your pockets. You can't speak the language, and you know nothing about the culture. Flash forward, he made it through high school. He was the first family member of our family to graduate from college, and he came back to the farm eventually and made it through the 1980s farm crisis. And without people like that in our world, we wouldn't enjoy the successes we have today. So it was a chance to talk about our mentors, our plan, our approach to agriculture. We pivot a lot here. We grow not in necessarily in size, even though we're about a 3,000 acre farm, but we grow vertically. And I think that was the story that Farm Journal wanted to tell. We also do things outside of production agriculture that enhance our farm gate revenue, some innovative approaches to leasing some water. But we're taking on the daunting task of moving the town of Keensburg forward.
Very good.
It's one of those things that you don't wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to develop my grandfather's legacy farm. Nobody does that. But we bought this farm from my uncle a number of years ago to keep the family farm in the family. And we knew, being right on Interstate 76, that in 20 or 25 years from now, development was going to find us. It didn't take that long. It took about 5 or 6 years. And we had developers trying to buy our farm from Denver, Fort Collins, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Texas, California, Florida. And we thought, hold on a minute. These people don't know anything about Keensburg. They don't know anything about Southeast Weld County. They don't know the needs and desires of our community. Keensburg's a unique town. If you live inside of the town of Keensburg, the average age of the person living there is about 34. But you get outside of the perimeter of city limits, and the average age of us in unincorporated Keensburg is about 60. So we have two needs. We have the needs of a young family, people that are calling Keensburg home, and then you have that aging population in the unincorporated areas of Weld County. So at the core of our project is to bring back and enhance a lot of the services we had in our town 50 years ago and don't anymore. That's expanding healthcare options. It's expanding assisted living opportunities. It's providing points of sales locations for small businesses. And it's an area where we know rooftops will come. The state demographer had identified over 125,000 people are expected to come into this part of Weld County by the year 2040.
Oh,
That's
holy cow.
that's not very far away. That's 15 years. And when we say Southeast Weld County, that's the communities of Lochbuie, Hudson, Keensburg, Fort Lupton, and of course, Roggen. And so where do these people go? Where do they live? Where do they work? How do they commute? What are our school districts going to do? How do we provide healthcare in what I still consider a rural community to this exploding population? So yeah, we're taking a very different path within our family farm. And I think that was part of what Top Producer and Farm Journal looked at is that I guess being a top producer means more than the crop you grow in the field. I think it has to do with not necessarily going up the ladder of success, but who do you take with you? Who do you take along with that journey up that ladder? And we've done some great things on the farm. We've had a lot of wins, we've had a lot of failures, but at the end of the day, it's about putting people first. It's about building the community you want to live in, not just for now, but from 150 years from now, when people call Colorado, Southeast Weld County, and Keensburg home, what is that impression that you leave with them? Why would they want to live here? And do they have that sense of place? And so we're affectionately calling this development home place because it is my grandfather's home place. And we are going to have to sacrifice the future of its production as a farm for something else. Let's do it right. And so that at the end of the day is the reason why we chose to follow through on the Farm Journal award, and blown away by all of this. I've met 200, 300 farmers across the country that are faced with some of the same dilemmas like we do. How can we remain relevant in agriculture? How can we put to use those beneficial tools in our backyards? How do we grow a market? How do we decommoditize the commodity? How can we help our communities move forward? And so I think the payoff in all of this is meeting all those folks, talking to them, and encouraging them to zoom out before they zoom in and think larger.
Wonderful. I love that. I love everything about what you just said. That is so neat. That is the reason you won. I am sure of it. That is so cool. All
Well,
right.
it's an awful high bar. Someday we have to work really hard to get there, but it is, we're still in shock. Most humbling experience I've ever had. And I thought Farm Journal did a great job of telling our story of our area, of the people, of what we've done, and the hope of tomorrow.
Mark, I just want to say again, congratulations to you and your family on this big accomplishment and this big award. Well deserved. Once again, my guest today has been Mark Arnusch of Arnusch Farms in Keensburg, Colorado.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Ag Queen Podcast with your host, Lori Boyer.